Hello, SBI Nation. My name is Tony Erickson. I am a managing director with Sales Benchmark Index, and today I am excited to be joined by Alan Rudolph, a veteran in the enterprise space focused on customer success and strategic deals. So we're going to be spending some time today talking about best practices in this area and how companies are pivoting to adjust to the changing environment, and extremely excited to have Alan on to share his expertise with us. Alan, welcome to the show. I'd love for you to introduce yourself to your audience, share a little bit about your background and why you are the foremost expert that we need to be talking to about this topic of customer success in today's world.
Thanks, Tony, and great to be on the show today. Again, everybody, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be in the world or listening to this discussion. Again, I'm Alan Rudolph, Senior Vice President with Apttus, a middle office enterprise SaaS provider, private equity backed. Apttus has been private equity backed for about 2 years. When I joined just before that, we were founder led. My prior company, SunGard Availability Services, another private equity backed company. And then I have a lot of experience, as you look at my bio, broadly in publicly traded companies as well as privately held companies. All throughout that journey, what I think is really important in terms of this aspect of customer success is I talk about impact to customer, and especially in the world that we're living in today with COVID-19, with the changing economic environment, the lessons learned throughout that 20+ year journey of how to manage and service customers is apropos to what's going on in the world today, and it's what I think about every day. With my current team, as an example, roughly 150 folks spread throughout the globe, it's all about how do I delight the customer on an ongoing basis, on both a reactive and a proactive mode, and it's making sure the team is focused on that aspect and then managing our results with the customer.
Thank you. No, it's a great intro, Alan, and I think it's a hot topic for our audience because one of the things that has become kind of an industry buzz right now is retention being the new growth. And the reality is that in today's world, companies are they're relooking at everything, and they're thinking about where they have mission critical applications versus where they have nice to have things. They're looking at things like seat counts and trying to figure out how they want to potentially restructure contracts based on furloughed employees or employees who are potentially now sharing jobs or working remote, whereas before they were in an office. So the reality is this is hitting customers from all angles, and how they respond to that, leading companies and those who employ best practices are really doing it through a world-class customer success organization. Correct. So one thing I'd love you to share are your perspective on what do CEOs need to be thinking about as we come into 2021, when they're now thinking about a wildly different environment, and how customer success is going to enable them to adapt to all these inquiries and these changes based on companies right-sizing, downsizing, seeing unprecedented growth. I mean, it runs the gamut. So yep. How customer success reacts, to me, has to be on every CEO's mind right now.
Absolutely, Tony. I mean, I think first and foremost, I think about it from a programmatic standpoint. So I'm a technology provider, and I am providing a solution. At the end of the day, the customer needs to derive value from that solution that I provide. How do I know that the customer is getting value? I need to have that programmatic approach. I need to think through adoption and usage and how to measure throughout that cycle. That's what's so critical about customer success programs, because we've seen so many service providers, technology service providers, that have had some form of customer success programs, and especially in these trying times, might potentially think about, oh, that's an area for cost savings, but we're losing sight of the opportunity that you just said in terms of retention, in terms of cross-sell and upsell. When you can't get to retention, you can't get to the cross-sell and upsell unless you get adoption and usage. And when I think about adoption and usage, so initially I implement, And then number two, I begin to expand. But typically that expansion of that usage is not effective, i.e. I'm using technology, but I haven't changed my process. So I've gotten efficient, but not effective. And then the third phase is finally fully effective, full deployment of the technology and the change in process so that I get the full business outcome. And that's the one word I want to hone in on today, Tony, which is driving to a business outcome. That's when I think about customer success, when I think about how a CSM, a customer success manager, works with his or her customer, it's all about putting specific plans in place and making sure those periodic reviews, those periodic plans, explaining what the technology is, what the roadmap is for the technology, what's in place today, what can be in place tomorrow. It's that whole journey that ultimately drives to those business outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the business outcomes are the most critical to be looking at. And I love your comments on cost savings, because definitely there are some companies out there who are looking at customer success as an area of cost savings, and time will tell, but that could definitely become a challenge for some of these companies in terms of customer loyalty. And now is the time to be investing in clients, and clients remember how people act, and clients remember how their partners act, and if they're really partners during trying times. So the opportunity to invest in customer success, to invest in a client base, it seems paramount to long-term viability.
I would absolutely agree, Tony. And again, when you think about the cost aspect of customer success, I think what's really critical is that, again, for any provider, I know we think about it this way, that we've stratified it or segmented our customer base, right? No two customers are equal. You need to think through how to service your smallest and your largest customers. And there's probably, I would say, a different model in terms of maybe a lower touch versus a higher touch way of servicing those customers. And you need to leverage technology to be able to do that, right? Whether it's webinars, whether it's, the lower touch customers still need to be touched. The lower impact customers still need to be touched, but they need to be touched in a different way than, for example, that top 20%, the most strategic customers that need that hands-on person that's going to be in an ongoing dialogue with the customer. And that's I think the real critical aspect that companies are losing sight of when they think about designing or redesigning their customer success program, and ultimately driving through the customer journey, right? Because it's not just the depth, right? The type of customer in terms of segmentation, it's also the customer journey, right?
Yep.
What aspect during the customer journey do I need a higher touch or a lower touch impact with the customer? And so again, those are two critical components, the horizontal and the vertical, in terms of defining an effective customer success program.
You know what? It's a great point and a perfect segue into our second topic. So the second topic is really thinking about the overall buyer's journey. As you were just saying, the customer journey, and let's break it into two parts. The buyer journey being until they become a customer, and then the customer journey being how they react over the lifetime that we've had that customer.
Yeah.
So the buyer's journey is fundamentally changing, as we know. It's absolutely evolving because of the fact that we can no longer go face to face. We can no longer go build a relationship over a meal or at a golf course. So it's fundamentally changing how we sell and how customers buy. But more importantly, it's also changing how customers are retained, and how their journey with your company in terms of onboarding or maximizing the value of the solution that they purchased from you are realized, and ultimately, are they getting those business outcomes that you talked about earlier? So I'd love to double click a little bit more on where you were going with the technology side, because I want to get your perspective on best practices that you're seeing where companies are leveraging digital solutions to enhance that buyer's or customer's journey throughout their life cycle.
Yep. Yep. I'll give you one example of a product that we've been working on. So as we talked about adoption and usage, and I'm going to stay in the enterprise SaaS B2B arena, right? So that's the context of what we're talking about here. So as a customer is managing this enterprise SaaS application, there's an implementation, and then there's an ongoing need to manage that environment. And I think it's really critical that we all understand that applications do need to be managed, right? Regardless if they're SaaS. In the old words of on-prem, it was a little different. It was just harder. But even in the SaaS world today, the applications need to be managed. So one of the focus areas that we've had is around managed services. And I'm going to say in the old world, managed services were no different than implementation services. They were delivered on a time and materials or a fixed price basis, and it was just here's a scope and here's a set hours. And I've been working with my team over the past 6 months and said we need to change the paradigm. We need to be able to deliver on a managed service offering that is business outcome based. And so what we did was we went back and looked and analyzed it, effectively all our requests over the past 2 years, and said, how can we develop a solution offering that is purely business outcome based? And we did that. And we came up with a program, and we trademarked it called Apttus Assist. But in essence, it is a program where a customer gets X number of requests in a given time frame, and each one of those requests drives to a business outcome, and the customer doesn't have to think about, oh, how many hours am I going to use, or how many people is this going to assume? That's not my problem as the service provider, as the SaaS, right? And it's a true business outcome for the customer. The customer understands a business outcome. They don't understand, 5 hours, 10 hours, 20 hours. So again, I think as this world is changing, as we're trying to figure out how to interact with our customers, as you said, Tony, we can't meet with everybody. The B2B world at the enterprise level is clearly one of relationship building, and people buy from people, right? People buy from people they like, people buy from people they know, people buy from people they trust. And so what's been really key as we defined this offering over the past 6 months has been driving to that business outcome so that the customer truly drives that value and doesn't have to get into the minutia of how did we get there, right? So it's very simple. How do I tie a request to an outcome?
I like that perspective, and big fan of how managed services can help companies take advantage of the software and the technology that they've invested in, so they make sure they're using it to its fullest extent possible. Definitely key. Also would love your thoughts, quickly on how telemetry plays into that, so that you guys actually see usage patterns and can react even in a proactive manner before they might even know that something is or isn't happening just based on usage.
It's all about metrics, right? That we all know that we shouldn't make business decisions on gut feel. We need to make business decisions based on metrics, right? And so whatever tools we're building into our solutions, those tools need to monitor usage, right? And then now we can, once we're starting to monitor usage, now we can develop alerts, and we can monitor those alerts. We can determine what thresholds need to be set, and then what interactions, again, whether high touch or low touch, what interactions need to happen with a customer. That's just on adoption usage. That's core metrics. The other piece that I don't want to lose sight of is CSAT, customer satisfaction, and NPS. We need to understand how our customers are feeling, right? We hear a lot in today's world about empathy. We need to be empathetic to what our customers are going through. We know different industries are impacted in different ways right now. Some are up, some are down, right? It is obviously all dependent upon that industry and how they're impacted by what's going on in the world today. But again, I think there's hardcore metrics from the application, from the solution, and then there are the customer metrics in terms of CSAT, in terms of NPS, and let's call it, Tony, the VOC, the voice of the the voice of the customer, and making sure we understand what our customers are thinking, what our customers are feeling, and how can we improve that overall experience that the customer is having. Because the more we improve that experience, now the renewal simply becomes, a signature on a piece of paper, and there's no debate over, how, when I'm going to sign.
Absolutely. No, completely agree with you on that front. Okay, so last question I want to understand and get into a little bit is, let's talk about those companies that haven't yet embraced customer success. I mean, as you know, there are still a few of them. Yeah. Even in the leading edge, technology industry, there are still companies that are debating whether or not they should be doing it and whether or not it's a worthy investment. What advice would you give to companies who are still considering that? And more importantly, when they do that, and when they ultimately move towards a customer success model, how do you integrate it in a way so that it's additive to sales and it's not contentious and creating internal go-to-market conflict?
Absolutely. So number one, customer success, regardless of what you call it, right, is a must-have. It is absolutely table stakes in today's environment. That being said, in terms of both organizationally and from a process orientation standpoint, there needs to be a tight tie with the sales organization, as well as customer success, customer experience, the customer officer, right? They need to, I don't want to get into a debate about how to organize. I'm just saying it needs to be tightly tied together, well planned out.
Well, and I think back to your original point, metrics. I mean, just as much as the client, what's the internal metric and the KPIs that everyone can aspire to, rather than just siloed organizations? How do you create unified corporate metrics?
Right. And there's definitely a move afoot that I'm seeing that let's call it the book of business by customer needs to be, managed by, let's call it a team, but let's call it by the sales team, right? The sales / renewal team. But it's in effect, if you treat every customer like a book of business, a P&L, that needs to have a chairman, right? That needs to have a captain, a lieutenant of the ship that's going to manage that customer and to manage the overall spend from that customer, and then make sure that all the programs that we've been talking about previously fall in line with that customer and managed by that point person to make sure that customer is successful, right? So you don't want to create silos in terms of how to manage that customer. We need to make sure that that customer has a focal point. That, how often have we heard from customers, I don't know who to call anymore, right? The deal was sold and they're sort of in this implementation phase, and whether a partner's implementing or the provider's implementing, we're at the high point, right? There's just lots of interaction. And then 6 months go by and the customer's like, service provider 911, who do I call? And how not to manage a customer, right? So again, it's all about the process and the metrics to make sure that each customer, based upon what we talked about earlier in terms of stratification, each customer is managed accordingly.
Yeah, I could not agree more. Your customers should not have to be an expert in your org design. They should know who to call. It should be very clear. It should be painless and frictionless, so that they can, do business with you with ease. And then, to your point, that just makes the next signature on the page a very easy one. You want to be easy to do business with, and a world-class customer success organization will create just that for those customers.
Yep.
Well, Alan, thank you so much for these insights. Genuinely appreciate this time and you spending time on the show today with us. Wonderful insights for our audience, and to the audience, want to wish you all the best of luck as always while you are out there trying to make your number. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thanks, Tony.